Today, we're going to talk about the sampler settings that you see every single time you drop an audio file into your channel rack by default. Please like and subscribe. Let's take a look. So I want to preface, if that's the word, by saying if you drag audio into your playlist, I want you to notice when we open our channel that you're going to be missing some options here. And this is because it opens in an audio wrapper, not an FL Studio sampler channel, like if I just dragged it in right there. Now you're going to see we get this whole other section here that we did not get when we dragged audio directly into playlist. Now, we will cover everything, this and this, as well as the options we have here. But even with that being said, you'll notice in this one versus our actual sampler channel, we have a lot more missing from here than we have going on in here. Looking at the front page of our sampler here, up here on the top right, we have our pan, which goes to this pan, our volume, which goes to this volume, as well as our pitch, the range in which we can pitch something. So if I go to 1, pitch it, turn that up, you'll see it gets smaller because I'm changing the range it can affect, as well as our target mixer track. And then we also have a mute solo button, which matches this one here. If I right click it, I can actually solo it, which muted the other one, or I can unsolo, and I can lock it so that if I do this solo option on other ones, it would leave this one alone, which is moot because I'm doing it from this effect itself. We're going to have our file section. This is actually going to be where this wave is located. We can actually load specific effects. We can click our locate sample in browser option, which is going to pull it up here. So if I went somewhere else, stop this from hiding. So you can see if I go somewhere else and I click this button, bow, there we are. Another way we can do this is by just dragging. You drag your sample in, it'll show you. We also have a remove sample option, which we won't do because I want this sample in here, and then we'll keep it moving on to the next section. We have time stretching. This is generally loaded as resample. Now, I have this open in the playlist here. I will open that wrapper because I want you to see what happens in resample mode as we start changing our pitch. See that? We've got some time difference going on. Now, if I play this, but I change the pitch here, now we're talking. But I want you to notice something. Our mode here changed from resample to auto. And that's because this resample mode can't support our time stretching here. If I change time, I can time stretch, but it's going to change our pitch with the time. Dragging this all the way to nothing sets us back to the default. So for this, we have our stretch option. If you have the new FL Studio, we have Stretch Pro. If you haven't gotten that update, I suggest you do. They added some pretty cool stuff. Stretch Pro is going to give us a format option, so we can actually keep our pitch and just change the format and do format shifting automation live, which is pretty cool. You'll notice when we go to stretch mode, it auto applies a time for us, just like that. And this is so that it's stretched to that period in time. And if we change our pitch, before in resample mode, you'll notice that changing our pitch up top here, change the length, and stretch, it will not. Something to note about stretch, however, is if I drag this back to none, go resample, and I turn this all the way up, for example, and I go stretch, it's going to snap us back to the default amount, which could mess up our timing if we had something timed a way that we liked it. Now, something I haven't talked about is our multiplier here. And what this does is this is going to increase or decrease the intensity of the stretching that we have. Now, if we go to modes, you'll notice a whole bunch of different modes here. At the bottom, we have speech, which is best for if somebody was to be talking or something like I am right now. We have mono, which is monophonic. We have transient, which is good for trying to make sure that transient information is solid. And we have generic, which is supposed to just kind of be like the best all around without actually aiming for something specific. We have auto, which is going to choose the mode that it thinks is best for us or that FL Studio thinks is best depending on what we're doing. We've got slice map and slice stretch. Slice map and slice stretch is for if you have a bunch of slice markers on a drum loop, for example. And FL Studio will use those markers to try and keep things on time while you're stretching and doing manipulations regarding timing. And then we have our E3 monophonic as well as our E3 generic, which is just upgraded versions of these legacy ones down here. Notice when I switch to these modes, I do lose my time stretching advantage until I start going and choosing an actual time with my time stretch versus in stretch mode, even with that off, we can change the pitch with no movement. You'll notice some of these are grayed out. They are grayed out when you can't actually use them due to whatever the specific situation is. However, it still allows you to click them and unclick them, allowing you to save those settings for later. Now, if we go back to our actual sampler channel, you'll see we've got keep on disk. Keep on disk loads from the hard disk rather than virtual memory to keep more virtual memory open for processing within FL Studio. And this is to help allow more and or larger FL Studio sample files for the 32-bit version of FL Studio. Supposedly in the 64-bit version, it's just supposed to help increase performance and speed things up a bit. To use this, however, the audio you're using has to be a 16-bit or a 32-bit wave file. It cannot be 24-bit. Choosing keep on disk will actually stop you from being able to use your pre-computed effects here as well. The next option we have here is resample. And what resample is going to do is if our audio file is recorded and saved in a different sample rate than our FL Studio project is loaded in, it will actually resample the audio file to our project's sample rate. This is supposed to help increase quality. However, if you have loop points or slices and other things like that in your audio file, it can actually set the timing off a little bit, causing clicks or pops. Because if you know sample rate, when you increase it, basically you're giving more points for audio to sit at, which can change the way the waveform sits and or the point that your slices or loop points are actually going to sit at. For the people who want to know how these pops or clicks are actually created, go look up zero crossing. Next, we have load regions. Load regions, loads the regions or the slices and loops and any data that's related to those kinds of things that might be embedded. Generally, these kinds of things will auto pop up and populate into your WAV file. However, this is regarding specific file types, but having this checked should load those things here, which will then be used by your slice stretch or slice match options. Next, we have load slice markers, which will do the same exact thing. Below, we have a declicking mode, which will best be shown on the actual audio wrapper instead of the sampler wrapper. To show the most drastic, I will take it to crossfade here, and we will make a cut in our audio file. And you will now see this little fading or crossfading that's going on here. If I change this to something quicker, you'll see it just about disappeared. But if I zoom in, there it is. Now, if you'll see, we have these transient options, and the idea is that transient is that very initial pop or hit of a sound. If you want to keep it, you want a shorter fade in time. Now, if we go down one, we have our start offset. If I move that, you can see It just changes where our start time is. We have use loop points, and this would be for something like if we actually had a loop in here. And now you'll see that these options are no longer gray. They are available. You'll see that loops around, or we can ping pong it. Or we can just not use it at all. This can actually be great if you want to make your own little wavetables. And now I have a little wavetable that I've made that I can play with. Okay, in pre-computed effects, I'll try and go as fast as I can. Remove DC offset. DC offset, you have a waveform that goes up and down, you have a middle line. If our waveform is high, like this, and the middle line is somewhere here, then you cannot push the gain as hard without it clipping. Because if the wave goes up here and it hits a clipping point, and then it goes down here, and it doesn't even get close, I mean, how much louder are you really going to get that? So removing DC offset actually centers it back again so that the waves can be pushed as much as possible, like in the sense of normalizing. Normalizing is going to push the gain of audio hard as it can without clipping. Now, in the sense of that audio being above that center line, reverse polarity would actually take that and flip it to the other side. Next, we have fade stereo. This is going to fade from our left channel to our right. Which is a cool stereo effect. We have swap stereo, which is going to swap the left and right side. We have reverse, which I can offset the start for. Another way we can achieve that is by the length or sample start knob. If I unreverse it though, you'll notice that this is the back end instead of the beginning of it. And sample start changes the front. We have our in, which is going to kind of fade in. It does widely affect the audio for the rest of the duration. Same with the out, it'll do the same thing. We also have a crossfade option. The idea is that you're going to add a little bit of the beginning of your loop, for example, if this was like a melody loop, and you're going to add it to the end, which is going to create a smoother transition between loops and less of a choppy kind of playback between, well, loops. Next thing we have is trim. Trim is actually going to trim silence. From what I understand, it's just from the end of your sample. So if you turn this up, it increases the threshold. If there's silence in the middle of your sample, I don't know that this would actually get rid of that or do that for you. Now, here in the pre-computed effects, we actually have another knob here, which you might not know about. We have a gain boosting option. I am going to turn this down here. And as you can see, we are way past clipping, but this also gives us a clipping option. Pretty nasty sounding. If your listening volume is quiet and you boost and you get yourself into clipping, it's actually not a problem until it hits a plugin that doesn't allow over 0 decibels and or it gets rendered out above 0 decibels. EQ. If I change it and down, one-way boosts, one-way cuts. Next, we have the mix for our ring modulation, as well as our ring modulation itself. If I turn this up, we have our filter cutoff. We can turn this down, as well as a resonance knob, which we can turn up. Next, we have two different reverb types. A is going to be kind of a closer source and like a tighter space, while B is going to be more like full and big and kind of closer to something like a concert hall. So if I turn the reverb up, switch it to B, let's just full on run it, versus A. We also have a stereo delay, more to the right, and the channel in the right is going to go before the channel on the left, more to the left, and you're going to hear it in your left before you hear it to your right. We also have pogo. Pogo will actually apply a pitch bend to the sample. Now, if I right-click the sample, I have a bunch of sample options, reload, save as. I can copy to the clipboard. And now that I've copied from the other one, I'll just drop something in here, right-click, and paste audio from clipboard. It's going to ask me a place to save the file that I've copied. And here I've got a rendered section. We'll name this Underwater Whale. Boom. Here it is, pasted over to the other channel. We also have Edit and Audio Editor, which is going to open Edison, Pitch Corrector, which is going to open New Tone, Time Warper, which is going to open New Time. We have Sampler Channel, which is one of these that we already have open, Fruity Granulizer, which is a cool sampler that you can play with, Slicer Channel, which is this little sampler here, and Slice X, which is a freaking beast. We can also detect the tempo if it's a loop. We can get Properties, which is going to open the Properties window via Windows itself, where we can see metadata and things like that. And we have different view types like Spectrum, which is going to show us frequency content, or the multi-channel waveform view, which will actually show us our left and right channels independently. These options are actually available also in the dropdown. In here, we have Route to Free Mixer Track, or the shortcut Control L, which can actually be used across multiple different plugins and files. By clicking Control L, we have them auto-named and now assigned in here in the mixer. We also have Save Channel State As, where I can change any of the stuff I want in here, and I can save it as a preset. If you save that preset and you drop it here in the browser, you can actually drag that preset into your channel rack here, and it'll load up exactly how you left it. Detached makes it its own thing outside of FL Studio's parameters. This will let you move it over to a second monitor and other things like that. However, this can also affect the way MIDI and audio interacts with it. If you start having audio problems and you detach one of these, Options Audio, make sure Auto Close is off, and that'll stop your audio issues. MIDI might be a different story though. We have Change Icon to assign icons, Change Color, or we have Rename Color and Icon, which gives us this little thing here. We can change the name, click this to change the color, and click this drop down to change the icons. The other option we have here is to open the piano roll, which we can just do by right-clicking anything we have and piano roll. Now, the next window that we have is our envelope/instrument settings. We can turn our envelope on here, and now when we play our sound, it's going to follow this envelope. Our attack is going to be how quick the sound engages. If I move this out, we'll notice it ramps up or engages immediately. We also have a delay, which delays the amount of time before the envelope engages. Next, we have the hold, which is how long this will hold. So let's get rid of the rest of this. Besides a tiny bit of descent so we don't get any popping or crackling. If I shorten this up, the longer it is, the longer it goes, which is great for sound design. After hold, we have descent, which is how quick this goes down. So if I move the descent and get rid of the hold, you'll see we have a long ramp down, where if the descent is quicker, it goes down quicker. The next thing we have is sustain. And sustain is something that you really want to understand with your envelope, because sustain does something interesting. You get your attack in, the hold goes, it starts descending, and it gets here. It is going to sustain at that point for as long as you hold that key or note down. That's why it's called the sustain. And then once and only once you release said note will the volume or the envelope continue along its pathway down our release here. So if I click and hold our note here, once I let go, this release will engage. Now, something else cool we have for all of these is our tension knobs, which will just kind of create a belly or a curve for every single one of these, which can make for some interesting and cool envelopes. If we switch to panning, I've actually never really seen anything here for an envelope. However, if we use our LFO here, we'll see we get a cool stereo effect going on with our LFO that we can control. Our LFO is going to work with an attack, which will act like the envelope attack, but for the LFO itself. An LFO is a low frequency oscillator, oscillating meaning going either way. Low frequency means it doesn't happen very frequently, so it's slower, And so our attack, the quicker it is, the quicker we're going to get that full amplitude of our oscillation. And the longer the attack, the longer it's going to take to build up to the full amplitude of our oscillation. And our amount can go the other way or invert the other direction. Our delay is actually going to be a delay for when our oscillation starts. And our speed will be how quickly it happens. If you'll see set to a slower speed, it only makes it to our right side before it dies down and disappears. We have our tempo option, which will lock our speeds and times to something tempo-based. Global is going to change whether the LFO happens somewhere randomly along this little line here, or whether it re-triggers and starts from the very beginning. Now, if global is on and we just start playing our sound, I want you to notice it slowly starts working its way to one side. If I turn this global off, it'll re-trigger from the same exact point every single time. Which in our case is going to be the center. And that's pretty much all we're going to hear, because the LFO speed's so slow, it doesn't pan to one side or the other before the sample's over. Next thing we have is our mod X, mod Y, and pitch. So if you want to use these, you're going to need to change this amount, which will either apply positively or negatively. And all of these are still the same. And something you'll see here is tempo again, which will give us tempo-based time for the points in which we set all of these points for our envelope. And that is available on every page. We will also have to have these on, which will happen as soon as we move anything. You'll see envelopes off. I move it and it's on. Now, mod X, mod Y will control the mod X, mod Y, which we have over here. Mod X and mod Y is generally some type of filter and some type of resonance. So if I play our sound and I turn our mod X down, it'll now be filtered to lower frequencies. If I turn mod Y up, we should now get a strong resonance at our cutoff frequency. Right? You hear that little sound, that's from the resonance. If I turn it off, we still get an interesting sound as we're moving the filter, but not as defined as with our mod Y or our resonance turned up. And there's different settings we have. That's our fast low pass. If you look up in the top left, it'll kind of tell you. We got a 12 dB low pass. This one's 12 dB as well. I don't know exactly what the difference is. We got a band pass, high pass, a band stop, which actually means instead of it letting center frequencies through, it's cutting only the center frequencies out. And then we've got a stronger or sharper cutoff. We also have SVF low pass and the SVF 24 dB or the ×2 low pass, which stands for state variable filter, which has to do with a certain type of circuitry or a certain type of electronic emulation that I don't quite fully understand, but click it if it sounds better. Cool. Underneath, we have our little piano deal here, which is pretty simple, pretty cool. Everything that is lit up here, we're available to play. If I actually click and drag, I can choose the areas that are playable on our piano roll or the notes that are playable. If at any time I want to reset this, I can click reset. This blue is going to be our root note. So I can set the blue to whatever note this sample is actually playing, and that'll make our root note line up here in FL Studio and put it on key with whatever else we're playing. Also, if you feel like shifting octaves this way, because you're here, you can. You can also shift octaves here if you're using the type to keyboard. We have enable main pitch, which enables our master pitch up here. If I have this off, we are unaffected by the master pitch. Next, we have add to keys. I know it's for multi-sampled instruments. I believe the idea is that it shifts the root note or the note triggered instead of actually shifting the pitch in order to avoid unnecessary stretching, again, for if it is a multi-sampled instrument. We also have fine tuning, which affects pitch in a fine-tuned way. And then we also have our multi-touch preview keyboard, which just makes this bigger, which is for if you're using like a touch screen or an iPad or something like that. Now, this keyboard here is also available in our miscellaneous functions section, which seems jam-packed, and I will try to get through as quick as possible. First things first is we have pan. This is going to be completely separate from our actual pan, which we can find here or up here. This is also a place where we can link automation and kind of leave that unaffected on our main sections here. This includes our mod X and mod Y, which we have assigned here in our filter section, and again can be affected independently. We also have polyphony here, which decides how many voices there can be and how they interact with each other. I want you to notice when max is 1, I can't play another one until it changes. If I have 2, as I play, it starts taking away the previous ones. And you can change the voicing up to however many you need or leave it off, which defaults to letting you play the maximum amount available. So we've also got a portamento mode feature here. If you'll notice now with this, when I press a note, it slides to it from the previous one. If I go to mono, it only lets me play one note at once and will still do the sliding back and forth. If I do mono only, then it will only slide when I play more than one note at once, and it'll slide from the first one to the next one. Here will affect our slide time. Under time, we have a gate. The gate will enact after a specific amount of time. We also have a time shift option, which is for delaying notes up to a 16th. And we also have a swing mix option, which swing is actually going to be here on our pattern. We can enable this. This is global. And our swing mix here will decide how much of that swing this specific sampler is actually going to get. We also have a full porta option, which says it bypasses this gate when portamento is on. However, no matter what I do over here in our polyphony section, as I'm turning portamento on, I see no bypassing of our gate here. Let me know if you know what's up with that. Now, we also have some options over here for tracking. This can work either by the velocity of a note or the actual note being played. If we go by velocity, then as a note gets more intense or more quiet, either above or below this mid value option here, then you're going to get some effect one direction or the other, however you set these. So if I set this to pound one direction, I'll do it keys since my laptop keys aren't velocity sensitive. You'll notice as I play upwards, we get panned more to the right-hand side. Same thing we can do with our mod X and mod Y, which again is our filters. We can tell them one way or the other. Next, we have group, we have our cut and our buy. So if you're doing hi-hats and you have like an open and a closed hi-hat, this is something you'd want to use. So if you have like open hats or closed hats and you want it to sound kind of real, you'll want that open hat to get cut off by the closed hat. You know, you're going to use cut groups. What you would do is you would take the hat that you want being cut off and you would tell it to be cut by the specific group in question, which would be the closed hats. And our cut by is going to be the group that is going to cut our cut group, which is on the top. So we're going to cut which group? We're going to cut group 1. We're going to cut it by which group? By group 2. If I go here, you'll see that this is group 2. So if I play this, and then I play that one afterwards, you'll see it cuts. After we do that, I'll play this one again. You'll see it doesn't cut it. Now, something to note about this cutting is if you have an envelope set up here, what will actually happen is our cutting actually sets it to the end of the sustain of that sample. So if you have a really long sustain, you're still going to get overlap. So let's try this again. Let's actually set this one to cut by 1, so they're both cutting by each other. They're still overlapping and fighting with each other because of these long releases. So that is something to keep in mind when using cut groups. So next thing we have is our arpeggiator here, if that's how you say it. We got all these options across the top. We'll start with up. Range is going to be the amount of octaves that it goes. See that? And our gate, we'll turn this down. It's just like the gate for the time over there. That way we can cut that down. Then we've actually got a time section here. Makes it go really fast. Really slow. We can set a chord. It'll play every single note in that specific chord all the way up, however many octaves we tell it. So if I turn the range down and turn it to something simple like a minor, you'll see we've got the 1 octave that it's playing in. If I turn this down, it does kind of just do what it wants. We've got our repeat option. Now we're getting a repeat for every single octave. We have a slide option, which will actually just hold the note and slide down. We'll bring it down from the top where it was ending before. Up, down, starting back at the bottom, it'll walk it up and walk it back down. Up, down, sticky will do the same thing, except for once it gets to the top, it'll play the top note one more time. When it gets to the bottom, it'll play the bottom note one more time. So if we pay attention to the one we're on now, not up, down, sticky, but up, down, bounce, we'll notice it goes up and down without doing double notes. Versus this, the sticky, will do double notes. And then we have random, which will do whatever it wants. Past the arpeggiator, or however you want to say it, this is going to be your delay. So if I turn this gate down, turn the feedback up, I'm clicking once, but I want you to notice we'll get multiple of these note triggers. If I turn this feedback up, it'll be like your standard delay, where the higher it is, the louder or quieter that the following delays get. And I say standard delay, but it's actually playing the sample consecutively with different effects added to it. If we want to change our filter and boost our resonance, we can also set a delay time. Let's make it a little quicker. The amount of echoes. We've got ping pong, which will bounce the pan volume or the pan percentage when it reaches 100% left or right. We also have fat mode, which is a special effect that is supposed to make more subtle echoes with alternated panning. That is just supposed to be just a more full fat effect. When you turn fat mode off, it kind of just resets things. Something else that we got here, got different presets here, and we can also reset it. We went through 3 different pages: the sample settings, the envelope settings, and the miscellaneous settings. While there is too many different options for us to go through one by one in the summary, there is plenty of timestamps below for you to skip around and learn what you want to know. If you like this video, please like this video. If you have any comments, please comment. I always appreciate a subscribe. It's Warren with Scale Audio, and adios.